The morning mist clung low in Meridian, California, as Anna Freeman stepped out of her grandmother's creaking attic and into the chill light of dawn. Clutched in her gloved hand was a battered Phillips tape recorder, its metal casing scarred by years of neglect. She stared down at its blinking red LED and felt her heart hammer in her chest. Today, 23 years after her grandfather, Pastor Elijah Freeman, vanished without a trace, she would finally learn what had happened. The single clue her grandmother left, this recorder, addressed to Elijah a week before his disappearance, had haunted her since the moment she found it. Now, at daybreak, she would confront whatever lay inside its reels. Anna drove her father's old Ford pickup toward Meridian's courthouse, where Sheriff Roy Cross agreed to meet her. Years of teaching middle school in the dusty outskirts of town had taught her patience, but patience had done little to dull the ache of unanswered questions. The memory of her grandfather's booming sermons, his warm laughter echoing off the church rafters, filled her mind as she navigated the narrow roads. Each landmark, the faded sign for Meridian High, the rusted water tower bleached by sun and wind, reminded her that Meridian had never really changed, even as it refused to reveal its darkest secret. Sheriff Cross emerged under the flickering street lamp outside the gray brick sheriff's office, his broad frame leaning against the passenger side of the pickup. His once dark hair was silver now at the temples, and deep lines marked his face maps of worry etched by decades of small-town policing. Anna handed him the recorder without speaking. He regarded it with a solemn nod. "Where did you find it?" he asked in a low voice. "In grandmother's cedar chest," Anna replied. "She passed last summer. I was clearing her attic when I discovered the false bottom and this." The sheriff's gaze drifted skyward as dawn brightened. "You know it's up to us now," he said. "If it's what I think it is, we might be able to solve this once and for all." Before Anna could respond, Marlon Tate, an earnest local handyman with a knack for dusty archives, arrived in his pickup behind theirs. Anna waved him forward. He hopped down, his ever-present notebook in hand. Together the three drove out of town, the recorder's silent promise echoing between them. They reached the old Freeman church by mid-morning. Ivy snaked up its stone walls, and the once white steeple had yellowed to the color of old parchment. The side door was padlocked, but the sheriff produced keys worn smooth by years of use and turned with a click. Inside pews lay rotting in the shadows, and shafts of sunlight illuminated dust particles so thick they seemed almost tangible. At the far end, the bell tower loomed, its ladder rusted but still intact. Anna swallowed, feeling a surge of both dread and determination. They climbed. Up in the belfry floorboards groaned under their weight. The peeling paint of the slanted roof overhead and the tangled ropes that once rang the bell lent the space an air of decay. Marlon swept a flashlight across the floor until the beam caught something unusual, a narrow trapdoor beneath the bell's frame. The sheriff pried it open, revealing a ladder that disappeared into the gloom below. Anna's breath hitched. "This wasn't here before," she whispered. "At least I never saw it." Sheriff Cross inhaled deeply and began his descent. Anna followed Marlon close behind. They emerged into a vaulted chamber carved into the church's foundation. Dampness clung to the walls, and the air smelled of earth and old secrets. At the center of the room sat a metal box, its surface pitted by rust. Anna's hand trembled as she read her grandmother's faded handwriting stamped across the lid. "Elijah, listen, before it's too late." With a tool from his belt, Cross pried open the box. Inside lay the recorder, surrounded by a few loose items, a crumpled photograph of Elijah preaching to a packed congregation, a tarnished crucifix, and most disturbingly, a blot of dried blood on a folded scrap of yellow paper marked "Not Safe." No sooner had the lid come fully free than the recorder clicked on its final message, autoplaying. In the dim light, Anna pressed play again and pressed the unit to her ear. For a moment, all she heard was the drone of the tape's motor. Then, faint at first, came the grind of a door on old hinges, slow, deliberate, as if someone were creeping through a corridor. A whisper followed. "If you find this, know that I was betrayed by one I trusted most." T.G. did this. A sharp crack split the silenced gunshots, and then Elijah's gasp of pain. Anna's eyes stung with tears. "T.G.," she breathed. Marlin's flashlight beam jittered as he shone it around the low-ceilinged room. "We have to get up," he urged, but Anna felt frozen. Above them, the trapdoor slammed shut with the force of a falling coffin. Sheriff Cross yanked at the ladder, but the bolt had somehow fallen into place. In the echoing darkness, Anna pressed stop on the recorder and held it to her chest. Each breath felt like fire in her lungs. "T.G.," she repeated. "Who is T.G.?" They climbed out as soon as they could, bursting into the blinding sunlight like convicts freed. The church bell tower creaked above them as though awakened from a long slumber. Sheriff Cross's jaw worked as he stared at Anna. "We know where to start," he said gravely. Anna's lips parted, but no words came. The church steeple seemed to loom over them suddenly, alive. Its silent bell and unspoken vow, Meridian's secrets had survived the years, but now they would no longer remain buried. They trudged back to the sheriff's cruiser in reverent silence. The recorder's final message rang in Anna's ears, its urgency a hammer against her ribs. Through the windshield, the Freeman Church, once the town's proud pulpit, loomed like a monument to secrets better left buried. Sheriff Cross started the engine without comment, and Marlin climbed into the rear seat notebook already open on his lap. Anna rode shotgun, gripping the recorder as though it might slip away. "T.G.," she whispered again. "Who is T.G.?" Cross glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "We'll find out. But first we need a safe place to listen to the full tape without interruptions. Can we go to my apartment?" Anna offered. It was only a few blocks away in a converted Victorian that stood on Meridian's quiet edge. After today, she needed something familiar and private. The cruiser's tires hummed over cracked asphalt as they drove. Cross radioed dispatch, asking for extra patrols around the church and its basement entrance. Marlin scribbled furiously, jotting down every detail. At her apartment, Anna led them up the narrow staircase to a small living room flooded by afternoon light. She set the recorder on the coffee table, its red LED still blinking steadily. Cross cleared his throat. "Play it from the top." Anna pressed play, and the grainy hiss of tape hiss filled the room, seeping into the corners like spilled ink. First came the faint echo of a church organ, Elijah Freeman's signature prelude. Then the pastor's voice, rich and measured, speaking into the recorder. "To whom it may concern, if these words find you, I am no longer among the living. The darkness I feared has come not from without, but from within my own sanctuary. I have been betrayed." Marlin leaned forward, pen poised. "Betrayed by whom?" he murmured. Another click of the tape and the echo of hurried footsteps. A name spat out in a whisper. T.G. Travis Gentry. Anna's heart sank. Travis Gentry was Meridian's town councilman, the man responsible for zoning and every new development. His family had deep roots here, roots that reached farther and darker than anyone guessed. He promised to protect our church from demolition. Instead, he sold me out. All that I built, he sold for his own gain. A beat of static, then a rush of wind, as if the tape had recorded him outdoors. Anna pressed pause. "Travis Gentry," she repeated, voice trembling. Grandpa would never mention a politician casually. Sheriff Cross set a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Politics in Meridian runs deeper than anyone expected. We'll look into Gentry's dealings." Anna took a breath and pressed play again. The tape crackled back to life. There is a ledger, a thin book hidden in the organ loft. It holds the names of those who profited, property developers, councilmen, and even clergy who took more than tithes. "Burn it. I cannot let it fall into the wrong hands." That was it, no further voices, no instructions. Silence, and then a final mechanical click as the tape spun empty. Marlin exhaled slowly. A ledger in the organ loft, that could be the smoking gun. Cross nodded. "First thing tomorrow, my deputies and I will search the church loft. Travis Gentry may have thought my men wouldn't dare disturb the pastor's pulpit." Anna slid the recorder toward Cross. "This is the key. It proves Gentry had motive to silence Grandpa." He pocketed the device carefully. There are procedures, probable cause, search warrants. But we've got enough now to start digging. She sank onto the couch, the weight of revelation pressing upon her, and the blood on the paper in that box. Marlin tapped his pen on the notebook. Could be from the day he recorded it, or it might be someone else's, someone who tried to stop him. Sheriff Cross leaned back, scanning the quiet apartment. Who else would have known about the recorder? Someone in the Freeman family maybe, but no one else had access to the attic. He studied Anna. "Have you told anyone about this?" She shook her head. "Only you two. I didn't want rumors to spread." He nodded approvingly. "Good. We'll keep this tight until we have solid evidence." They spent the next hour planning the morning, securing search warrants, drafting questions for Gentry, and arranging for forensic specialists to examine the church's organ loft. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the room in fading gold, and Anna realized the day's revelations had left her both shaken and resolute. As Cross and Marlin departed, Anna sat alone, watching the door close behind them. Travis Gentry's betrayal had toppled her understanding of Meridian's gentle facade. Her grandfather's legacy, once a beacon of faith, now stood at the center of a conspiracy reaching to the town's highest echelons. Clutching the recorder to her chest, Anna whispered into the gathering dusk, "I promise you, Grandpa, we'll finish what you started." By sunrise, a thin fog had settled in the streets of Meridian, muting the outlines of houses and storefronts into ghostly silhouettes. Anna Freeman awoke to the shrill call of her cell phone, Sheriff Cross, texting to meet at 7:30 a.m. at Freeman Church. In her small kitchen, she poured coffee and wrapped her grandfather's voice recorder in a soft cloth before tucking it into her tote. Her reflection in the window was drawn and sleepless, but determined. At precisely 7:30, she stepped onto the church's cracked stone steps. Sheriff Cross and Deputy Marlin Evans were already there, their breath pluming in the cool air. The morning service bell, silent for decades, stood sentinel above them. Cross greeted her with a nod. "Morning, Anna. We've got the warrant." The judge signed it around midnight unanimously. He held up a sheaf of papers. "Your grandfather's tape helped." Anna managed a small smile. "Thank you." They entered under the peeling wooden doors, the sanctuary's hush welcoming. Dust motes floated in the beams of dawn light that slanted through stained glass windows. The old pews lay undisturbed, but Anna's eyes were drawn upward to the balcony where the massive pipe organ, her grandfather's pride, occupied half the space. Deputy Evans flicked a flashlight at the foot of the stairs leading to the organ loft. "We'll start here. I'll stay on the steps. You two go up." Cross handed Anna a pair of thin rubber gloves. No fingerprints left behind, all evidence catalogued. She gingerly placed her feet on the narrow wooden steps, the grain worn smooth by decades of foot traffic. At the top, Cross followed. The loft was cramped, just enough room for a bench, the organ console, and rows of pipes arching above in gleaming brass. A thin layer of dust covered every surface except where decades-old footprints and indents marked a path directly toward the back wall. Anna's heart thudded as she and Cross swept black lights over the dusty floor. There along the baseboard, two near-invisible seams revealed a narrow door camouflaged in wood grain and dust. Cross knelt and felt for hinges. A quick nudge popped it open. The hinges creaked, exposing a shallow cavity behind the pipework. Inside lay a slim, leather-bound book. Anna reached in and retrieved it with trembling fingers, brushing away dust. The cover bore no title, but a metal clasp held it firmly shut. The ledger, Anna whispered. Its weight felt impossible in her hand, the promise of long-buried truths pressed into its pages. Downstairs, Deputy Evans had secured a perimeter, and Sheriff Cross quickly radioed for the crime scene unit to arrive with cameras and evidence bags. Using a clean cutting mat and gloves, he pried open the ledger's clasp. The pages within were yellowed, but the ink looked eerily fresh. Anna flipped through. The ledger held columns of names, dates, and figures, land sales, construction contracts, tax breaks. Many entries bore council members' names: Gentry, Stark, Rutherford. Then, in red ink, a marginal note beside Travis Gentry's name: profit margin 300% Elijah's downfall. Cross glanced up. He meant to ruin your grandfather's church, drive him out. Anna's throat tightened. He did more than that. They carefully bagged the ledger and returned it to the cruiser. As evidence text documented the find, Anna watched the sun finally breach the eastern horizon, gilding the church's facade in warm light. For a moment she allowed herself relief. The ledger existed. The truth was safe. But Meridian was waking. Across Main Street, the town's only cafe opened its doors. Pedestrians began their morning routines oblivious that one of their own had just exposed corruption at the highest level. Anna wondered how many lives the ledger's revelations would upend. Inside the cruiser, Cross took out his phone. "I'm sending a copy of the ledger pages to the DA's office. We'll coordinate arrests by mid-afternoon. In the meantime, Anna, you should go back to the apartment. Marlin and I will handle custodial logistics here." She slid behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel as though it were a lifeline. "Thank you, Sheriff, for everything." Outside, Cross and Deputy Evans began directing the incoming officers. But Anna's mind had already shifted. Her next stop awaited. At her apartment, she dropped her tote on the coffee table and called her editor at the Meridian Gazette. "Harper, you're not going to believe this," she said, her voice brimming with cautious excitement. Within minutes, her story outline was in Harper's inbox. Freeman Church Ledger, recovered Councilman Gentry, and others implicated. She exhaled, but relief was short-lived. She had one more task. She needed to confront Travis Gentry directly. By 10 a.m., Anna arrived at Meridian's Town Hall, a neoclassical building crowned by a copper dome. Gentry's nameplate shone by the double oak doors. Inside, the marble floors echoed beneath her footsteps as she journeyed down a corridor lined with portraits of past mayors and council presidents. She found Gentry in his office phone, pressed to his ear, reviewing documents behind a polished mahogany desk. His dark hair was immaculately styled, tailored suit, crisp. Anna cleared her throat. He lowered the phone. "Ms. Freeman, what a surprise." His smile was polite but cold. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I need to ask you a few questions," she said, producing her press pass. "About the ledger found in Freeman Church." His expression flickered, a fraction of an exhale of tension. "The ledger," he said, closing the folder on his desk. "I'm afraid I'm not aware of any such document." Anna slid a printout from her notebook across the desk, the red ink notation highlighted. He glanced down, brow knitting. "Mr. Gentry," she continued evenly, "this ledger bears your name with financial entries meant to cripple the church's operations." "Care to explain?" He pressed fingertips to his lips. For a heartbeat, Anna saw vulnerability, fear, before he masked it with composure. "Ms. Freeman, you must understand that yesterday's warrant was obtained on incomplete evidence. The DA's office is already disputing the ledger's provenance. Do you really believe a faded diary with scrawled names can stand up in court?" "I believe the tape my grandfather left and the ledger itself are more than enough evidence," Anna said. "His own recording names you specifically." Gentry's face went stern. "Your grandfather was, as you now see, a troubled man. His paranoia about me was legendary. I denied him funding for a renovation that would have bankrupted the church. He saw betrayal where none existed." Anna rose. "The ledger speaks for itself." She turned to leave, heart pounding. As she reached the door, Gentry called after her, voice low, "Be careful, young lady. You're poking into matters that could tear this town apart. And some things are better left buried." Outside, Anna steadied herself against the marble column flanking the entrance. The wind gusted, ruffling her hair. Gentry's warning rattled her, yet the ledger and T.G. His name were already unraveling Meridian's calm. Her next destination, the offices of the D.A. There she would hand over her grandfather's recorder and the ledger. Justice would have to run its course. Back at the cruiser, Sheriff Cross and Marlin waited once more. They exchanged nods as her car rolled up. "Got what we need?" Cross asked. Anna climbed in. "Yes, and I've just spoken to Gentry. He's going to spin this." Cross settled behind the wheel. "Then we move faster. I've coordinated with the state police to execute search warrants on Gentry's properties this afternoon. No more delay." Marlin studied her. "You ready?" Anna looked out over Meridian's steeples and chimneys, the morning sun gilding the rooftops. We're just getting started. The mid-morning sun poured through the large windows of the Meridian County District Attorney's office, illuminating rows of desks crammed with case files and ringing telephones. Anna Freeman stood before the DA's main conference table, her leather-bound bag clutched to her side. Seated at the head of the table was District Attorney Ruth Delgado Stern, deliberate and seasoned by 2 decades of high-profile prosecutions. Captain Davies of the State Police and Sheriff Cross flanked Delgado, a silent show of enforcement unity. Delgado flipped through the photocopies Anna had supplied the ledger pages rimmed in red ink and typed transcripts of the voice recorder. Ms. Freeman Delgado began, her voice measured. This evidence is explosive. If authenticated, it reveals a decades-long conspiracy orchestrated by Councilman Gentry and his cronies, manipulating land deals, diverting public funds, and plotting vengeance against your grandfather's church. Anna nodded, arms shaking slightly. My grandfather recorded his doubts and suspicions over many years. He never imagined anyone would believe him. But now that the ledger has surfaced, it matches his recording so precisely that there's no doubt about the connection. Delgado tapped her pen against the table. We'll move swiftly. Today, teams execute parallel search warrants on the offices and residences of Travis Gentry, Helen Stark, and former Council President Reginald Rutherford. Early this afternoon, they'll be arrested on charges of racketeering, wire fraud conspiracy, and witness intimidation. But before we proceed, I need you and Sheriff Cross to testify before a grand jury to seal the case formally. Sheriff Cross leaned forward. The state police will secure the properties and assist our officers. We've already requested forensic teams to comb Gentry's City Hall office for financial records. No stone will be left unturned. Anna met Delgado's gaze. I'm ready, whatever it takes to bring justice for my grandfather and for Meridian. Delgado nodded. Then let's get started. She signaled Captain Davies, who ushered Anna to the witness stand area. A stenographer and court clerk prepared the oath. Anna closed her eyes, briefly steeling herself. Her testimony today would crack open the corruption at Meridian's core. An hour later, Anna emerged, relief and exhaustion warring across her face. Sheriff Cross put an arm around her shoulders. You were brilliant, he said quietly. The jurors will have no choice but to issue indictments. Before Anna could reply, a detective approached with a folder stamped urgent. Anna's heart lurched. It was from the Meridian Gazette Harper had discovered that federal authorities wanted to interview her as well. This case raised national stakes given the pattern of municipal corruption. Anna's phone buzzed a news alert bearing her name in the headline. Back in her car, Anna finally let herself exhale. The wheels were in motion. Indictments, arrests, grand jury, national press. Meridian would never be the same. Sheriff Cross sat in the passenger seat. Ready to finish the day at Freeman Church? He asked. Anna looked down at the small bundle in her lap, her grandfather's original recorder now wrapped in an evidence bag. Yes, she whispered. There's one more place we need to uncover. At Freeman Church, the sanctuary lay in twilight shadow. Dust particles drifted through the stained glass like golden embers. Anna Cross and Deputy Evans descended the narrow steps to the hidden nook behind the organ pipes where the ledger had been concealed. But this time, Anna didn't pull the ledger back out. She knelt and brushed her fingertips along the back wall, tracing the seam of the concealed door. Would you look at this, Cross murmured, shining his flashlight into the cavity. There, layered behind the ledger, lay a metal box wrapped in aged parchment and twine. Evans secured the box in an evidence bag while Cross pocketed the ledger. Anna's breath caught as Delgado's earlier words echoed, "No stone left unturned." "Open it," she urged gently. Under the shelter of Cross's visor light, they pried the box open to reveal a stack of yellowed envelopes, each marked with a date and a name, council meeting, minutes, unfiled tax reports, and handwritten letters detailing covert payments, bribes to city officials, hush money to journalists, even threats against her grandfather. At the very bottom lay several manila folders bearing the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Anna's pulse thundered. FBI documents, she breathed. Cross carefully slipped an FBI folder free. Operation Clear Voice. He read aloud, skimming the top sheet. An investigation begun in 1969 into corruption in Meridian's municipal government. It was stalled, evidence went missing, agents reassigned. Someone deliberately buried this to bury the truth. At that moment, the church's clock tolled 6, an eerie reminder of how time itself had been manipulated. Anna pressed a finger to the aged paper. My grandfather tried to finish the job recording conversations down here, safeguarding these documents. She closed her eyes, tears threatening. He never got the chance to see his church restored. Deputy Evans secured the final envelope in an evidence bag. "We'll forward this to the federal prosecutor's office immediately," he said, tension softening his voice. Anna stood cradling her grandfather's recorder. Every component of the scheme, municipal collusion, state police cover-ups, federal investigations shelved, had been revealed. Justice would not just be local but federal now. They ascended the organ loft steps and emerged into the cathedral-like sanctuary. Golden light from the stained glass bathed them in a rainbow glow. Anna ran her hand along a carved pew, remembering childhood Sundays, hope in her grandfather's sermon music rising from this very organ. Sheriff Cross offered a rare smile. He would be proud. Anna nodded, her voice trembling but strong. And now, after 36 years, Meridian will finally hear the truth, my grandfather's voice and mine. As they filed out into the cool evening air, the church bell chimed once, a single clear note echoing through Meridian. It rang not of mourning, but of renewal, the legacy of one man's faith, and the years later, justice that set it free. The morning light slanted through the blinds of Anna Freeman's home office, painting long stripes across the hardwood floor. A single mug of cold coffee sat half-finished on the corner of her desk, untouched through fitful hours of sleep. Today would be the first Saturday in decades that Meridian City Council would meet without Travis Gentry at its helm. Anna's phone buzzed with alerts, the Gazette's top-story local TV's morning headlines, and urgent texts from her attorney. The air in Meridian hummed with anticipation. Anna dressed quickly in a tailored navy suit, professional but not formal, suitable for both a private meeting and a public gathering. She pinned her grandfather's church lapel pin to the lapel of her blazer, a quiet talisman. As she descended the stairs, the rich scent of freshly baked cornbread wafted from the kitchen, where her sister Emily worked at the stove. "Morning," Anna said, raking a hand through her hair. "Thanks for making breakfast." Emily slid a skillet of cornbread onto a cooling rack. "I figured you'd forget," she teased, glancing at the empty coffee cup. "You look like you've been up all night." "Something like that," Anna replied, pouring steaming coffee into a fresh mug. "City Hall will be a circus today." Emily rambled on about the swirling political gossip, who would nominate the next council president, which factions were jockeying for power. But Anna's thoughts drifted to the metal box of documents hidden behind the organ pipes of Freeman Church. That box, with its sealed folders of FBI files and unprecedented proof of corruption reaching back to 1969, had changed everything. She lifted her mug in a silent toast to her grandfather's memory. At 9 a.m., Anna's car rolled onto Main Street. Chains of yellow police tape still crisscrossed the facade of Gentry's law office, where armed officers guarded the entrance. Across the street, shutters had been dropped at Gentry's City Hall office. One side of the building was draped in black cloth. A small crowd of reporters and onlookers lined the sidewalks, cameras poised, microphones held aloft. Anna adjusted her pin and walked with purpose toward the council chambers. Inside the ornate marble foyer, Anna nodded to Sheriff Cross, who gave her a tight nod in return. The deputies at the door, some of whom had worked on the case for months, stepped aside to let her pass. Captain Davies took her coat, ushering her into council chambers. The long semicircular dais stood before her empty seats, waiting for the 8 members of the new council. Anna took a seat at the public gallery, her attorney, Mr. Pearson, beside her. The room was silent but tense. Council members filed in, some smiling at the promise of change, others looking grim or defiant. When Council President Elena Ruiz called the meeting to order, her voice still shook slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, today marks a new chapter in Meridian's history. Yesterday we witnessed the culmination of an investigation that began nearly half a century ago. We honor those who fought for justice, especially the Freeman family, whose persistence and courage have exposed corruption at every level. Anna felt her pulse quicken as Ruiz invited a moment of silence. Heads bowed. When the silence ended, Councilperson Ming Zhao moved to the podium. He read aloud a joint resolution to expunge all municipal awards conferred under Gentry's administration, to freeze any contract signed during his tenure, and to begin a full review of historical city records. Each phrase landed like a hammer strike. As the council voted unanimously in favor, the gallery broke into tentative applause. Anna exhaled, but she knew this was only the beginning. The documents in her possession, the church's ledger, the FBI files, would soon force state and federal agencies to re-examine decades of hidden dealings. After the session, Anna slipped out into the stately corridors, her mind racing. She was due at the U.S. Attorney's office this afternoon to hand over the sealed folders, but first she had agreed to meet with Reverend Caroline Blake at Freeman Church. By 11:30, Anna's car eased through the manicured grounds of Freeman Church. The congregation had gathered on the front steps, some clutching hymnals, others cameras, to celebrate the first Sunday of Truth and Reconciliation services, as Reverend Blake called them. The air smelled of magnolia and new beginnings. Blake, her white hair in neat coils, greeted Anna with a warm embrace. "You did it, Anna. You freed this town from a long nightmare." She led Anna inside the hushed sanctuary, the light through the stained glass dancing in jewel tones on the worn wooden pews. As they ascended to the organ loft, Blake paused before the hidden panel. "Show me," she whispered. Anna knelt, slid open the concealed door, and retrieved the metal box, placing it reverently on the organ bench. Blake's eyes filled with tears as she touched the parchment and metal. "Your grandfather would be proud," Blake said. He believed this day would come, though few others did. Anna placed her hand over her heart. "I only wish he were here to see it." Blake laid a gentle hand on Anna's shoulder. "He is in spirit, and his voice will ring through this place once more." With that, Anna locked the box in her briefcase and headed across town to the federal building. By 1 p.m., she stood in the marble lobby of the U.S. Attorney's office, flanked by 2 agents. The folder was marked Evidence, Freeman v. Meridian. An agent led her through security into a conference room where Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Holden awaited. Holden offered a curt nod and slid forward an evidence log. "Ms. Freeman, thank you for delivering these files. We'll launch our own probe under RICO statutes and coordinate with the state for simultaneous prosecutions." Anna signed the log, her hand trembling slightly. She realized this was more than local politics now. A federal judge, potential prison terms surpassing Gentry's, a nationwide spotlight on Meridian's failures. Her actions would reverberate across state lines. And yet somehow she felt at peace. Later that afternoon, back in Meridian, Anna returned to her home. The late sun slanted through the maple trees, gilding the porch. Neighbors waved from across the street, gratitude and relief in their eyes. For the first time since she had discovered the ledger and the recordings, Anna allowed herself to truly smile. Inside, Emily had a pot of soup simmering on the stove. "You look less like you're going to war," she said, ladling bowls of comfort. Anna sat at the kitchen table listening to the low hum of neighborhood life. "This has been the fight of my life," she confessed, wrapping her hands around the warm bowl. "My grandfather recorded the truth, hid it for decades. I just had to unlock the door." Emily smiled. "You and those recordings did more than unlock doors. You freed Meridian's soul." Anna let out a slow breath. "Now we begin the hard work of healing." She looked across the table at the worn wooden surface scarred by spilled coffee and scribbled homework. The simple kitchen, the comforting soup, these were the things worth fighting for. That evening, as dusk fell, Anna stepped onto the porch and gazed down Main Street. The streetlights flickered on, one by one, illuminating the quiet facades of the town she loved. For all its flaws and deceptions, Meridian was home. In the gathering twilight, Anna reached into her pocket and touched her grandfather's old tape recorder. His final message, his hidden ledger, the buried FBI files, they had all led to this moment of reckoning. Ahead lay trials, restitution, federal hearings. Yet Anna felt something else too, a profound hope tempered by diligent resolve that the truth long suppressed would at last set them free. The pain medication still clouded Joshua's thoughts when he awoke to the steady hum of hospital machines. His arm throbbed where they had stitched the deepest wounds, and his torso felt bruised beneath the bandages. He blinked up at the sterile ceiling, then turned his head to see his father sitting in the chair beside the bedhead in his hands. "Hey, buddy," Ethan murmured, looking up with a tired smile as the monitor beside Joshua's bed beeped in a calm rhythm. He looked as if he had slept, or at least rested only minutes ago. "How are you feeling?" Joshua closed his eyes and took a slow breath to quell the dizziness. "Better," he said softly. "I had a dream." Ethan shifted in his chair, immediately alert. "Tell me about it if you want." The boy hesitated, then drew the sheet up to his chin. "I was outside the tunnel. The dog was there, but it wasn't attacking me. It was scared." He blinked as if surprised by the memory. "Then I saw that woman." Ethan's chest tightened. Mira, Joshua nodded, voice small. "She was standing by the river. She called my name, but her face, it was like she was crying." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Dreams can help us process things," he said quietly. "You're safe now. The dog can't get to you." Joshua frowned. "But why was she there, and why did she call my name?" He looked to his father with fearful eyes. "We don't know everything yet," Ethan admitted, "but we will." He took his son's good hand. "Nurse Karen will be back soon to check your vitals. Then Dr. Patel will see you. Why don't you rest a bit more? I'm going to grab some coffee, okay?" Joshua nodded, and Ethan stood slowly, careful to keep his posture relaxed. As he stepped out into the hallway, his mind whirled with questions. Mira's suicide, Mira's intervention to save him, and now Joshua's dream. There was something she wanted to tell them that went beyond obsession. At the nurse's station, Ethan filled a cup at the coffee machine. Nurse Karen approached, clipboard in hand. "Your son's blood pressure is stable," she reported. "The pain meds are working well. He's asking normal questions and seems coherent. Dr. Patel will be here in 10 minutes. "Thank you," Ethan said. "Has Mrs. Coulter woken up?" "She has." Karen nodded. "The surgeon says she's stable, though she's groggy from the anesthesia. I'm monitoring her this morning." Ethan cradled the coffee mug, glancing down the corridor toward his wife's wing. The price of truth had been high. His son mauled by a dog, his wife shot the community in upheaval. But each revelation had brought them closer to understanding the web Harold had woven. Now Mira added a new layer. He needed answers from her input, if only he could glean them. Dr. Patel arrived punctually, his white coat crisp despite the early hour. He greeted Ethan with a firm handshake. "Your son continues to improve," he said. "I'd like to administer the first dose of reconstructive ointment to the facial wounds. Then we'll see if we can remove those stitches in 2 days." "Sounds good," Ethan said. He mentioned a dream, something about Mira. Dr. Patel arched an eyebrow. "Dreams can be vivid when recovering from trauma. Encourage him to write down anything that feels important. I'll ask the psychologist to visit after rounds." As Dr. Patel departed for the next patient, Ethan clutched his coffee and approached the room 312, where his wife lay. The door stood ajar, the small nameplate gleaming Claire Coulter. He slipped inside quietly, Claire's dark hair fanned over the pillow, her breathing slow and even. "Hey," he said softly, perching on the edge of the bed. She stirred, eyelids lifting. "Hi," she whispered. Pain flickered in her eyes. "How's Joshua?" "I just came from him," Ethan replied. He gently brushed a stray curl from her forehead. "He's stable. Dreaming about Mira." Claire's brow furrowed. "Mira?" "The woman." She sat up with effort, and he waited until the nurse rechecked her IV. She appeared in his dream by the river, he said. He said she was scared and calling his name. Claire winced. That makes sense. He must have seen her near the bunker. I remember, after I left the house, I saw Mira drive up. When Claire's voice broke, Ethan leaned forward. What did you see? I saw her car at the curb. She stopped in front of our house, Claire said, wincing as she shifted under the blankets. But I didn't see her get out. I thought maybe she was looking for Harold. She swallowed. I didn't know Joshua was still at home. Ethan pulled her hand gently. He wasn't. He followed me out to the clinic, which is why Mira and those men were able to break in. Claire nodded, tears gathering. She knew, she whispered. She knew he was there. The weight of that realization hung between them. Mira had been tracking Joshua's movements, Harold's remnants of control extending even into the Coulter home. If Mira could find them so easily, if her obsession had overridden every boundary, who was left to trust? I'm going to ask Detective Martinez to debrief me, Ethan said finally. I need to know everything she said when she surrendered. Maybe we can find out what she knew about Mira's movements. Claire rested her head on the pillow, her gaze distant. Promise me something, she said suddenly. No more secrets. We share everything from now on. Ethan rose and leaned over to kiss her forehead. I promise. Later that afternoon, the Coulters met with Detective Martinez in a small windowless briefing room at the police station. Blueprints of the Coulter home. The bunker layout and surveillance stills filled the whiteboard behind her. Ethan and Claire sat side by side at the table, joined by Mr. Pearson and Agent Scott, the FBI liaison. Detective Martinez turned on the recorder. From Officer Ramirez's report, Mira Choi surrendered at the station's front desk at 2:17 p.m., requesting to see Detective Martinez with no weapon, wearing a plain gray hoodie and carrying a small duffel bag. Agent Scott continued. Inside the bag were a few personal belongings, photographs of Mira with Harold, a spiral notebook filled with entries about keeping the legacy alive, and a single VHS tape labeled Play Me. No weapon was found on her. Claire shivered. Play me, she echoed. The detective nodded. She insisted that the tape contained Harold's final confession about Joshua. We retrieved it immediately. Mr. Pearson inserted a blank VHS cassette onto the table. We've transferred it to digital. It's here on this flash drive. He tapped a USB stick against the table. Ethan's heart pounded. Let's watch it. They dimmed the lights and plugged the drive into the TV monitor. The screen flickered to life with grainy footage of a cluttered, dimly lit room, the same organ loft in Freeman Church where Anna had first found the box. Harold stood before the camera, pale and unsteady. He held an old reel-to-reel tape recorder at chest level. April. His voice cracked. If you're seeing this, it means the truth can no longer be hidden. He paused, swallowing. He glanced down at a sheet of paper in his hand. I kidnapped Joshua to protect him from the forces I couldn't trust, parents, clergy, politicians. They would break him. They had to be stopped. Sweat beaded on his forehead. But once I realized what I'd done, once I saw that church, I knew I couldn't keep him safe, not like this. Not. Harold's gaze flicked to the left as if looking at someone. Mira, I trusted you to guard him if I failed. But no, his eyes glistened with tears. Don't let them hurt him. He needs a family. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, Joshua. Eternally sorry. He pressed a switch and the recorder clicked off, ending the tape. The room fell into silence, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Claire gasped. He apologized. Ethan's throat tightened. He knew it was wrong. Detective Martinez exhaled. It seems that the confession on the tape prompted Mira to surrender. She hoped to protect Joshua, but her grief and love for Harold drove her to madness. Mr. Pearson closed the laptop. Legally, this tape is extraordinary. It confirms Harold's motivations and also Mira's involvement. The RICO indictment will now include multiple counts against Mira in absentia, obviously, and the two men Carlos Reyes and Michael Torres. Claire wiped her eyes. He loved our son in his frightening way. He truly believed he was saving him. Ethan nodded numbly. He was deluded, but he loved him. Detective Martinez gathered her papers. "We'll finish up the affidavits by this evening. I'll ensure Joshua's medical care is covered fully and protective orders are in place for your family." As they filed out of the conference room, Ethan and Claire exchanged a long look. The confession tape laid bare Harold's twisted devotion, but it also underscored the complexity of human love and delusion. Walking toward the elevators, Claire slipped her hand into Ethan's. "One more thing," she said softly. "Mira's VHS. Can we keep a copy?" Ethan squeezed her fingers. "We will. For Joshua." They rode the elevator down in silence, the floor numbers ticking by like heartbeats. Below, the station bustled with officers and agents. But somehow the Coulters felt closer to peace than they had in years. Because at last the hidden voice recorder's message 23 years later had spoken the truth their town needed to hear. Sunlight slanted through the Venetian blinds in Ethan's home office, illuminating the blueprints of the Coulter house that lay spread across the desk. The soft, persistent chatter of a late afternoon street below came through the open window, a gentle reminder that life outside their world-altering trauma continued on, oblivious to the whirlwind that had engulfed the Coulter family. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing tired eyes and scrubbing at the stubble on his chin. He had just reread the transcript of Mira Choi's police interrogation. Her words trembled with regret, but also with something darker, a defiant loyalty to a man who had held their son captive. That loyalty, twisted as it was, had nearly cost them Joshua all over again. Across the room, Claire sat at the couch, pages of photographs spread around her like a mosaic snapshots of Mira with Harold family portraits of the Coulter shots of the bunker's construction plans. She studied them all with a meticulous eye, searching for clues to the enigma of Harold Stevens' final years. She had learned from the confession tape that Harold had entrusted Mira with guardianship of Joshua the moment he realized the enormity of his crimes, and she had taken that role far more literally and dangerously than anyone could have imagined. Claire tapped her pen on one photograph, a grainy, flashlit image of Mira and Harold in the cavernous hall behind the church. Mira's arm was draped around Harold's shoulders. Harold's smile was uneasy, as if he sensed a fault line under their affection. He seemed to trust her completely, Claire mused aloud. But why Ethan stood and joined her by the couch? He must have seen in her the loyalty he felt he deserved, he said quietly. She offered him the illusion of love and companionship after the confession, but the bunker, the lies, everything, they weren't enough to protect Joshua. He studied the photographs, his gaze settling on an image that showed Mira stepping out of Harold's battered Volvo, her expression unreadable. She repeated his mistakes by hiding his secrets instead of exposing them. Claire's shoulders slumped. "We almost lost Joshua yesterday because those two men, Michael and Carlos, they thought they were completing Harold's work." She closed her eyes, and somehow Mira's suicide removed the last obstacle between them and our family. Ethan squeezed her hand. "We need to make sure no one else can ever do that." He turned away and selected one of the photographs, an aerial shot of the bunker entrance cut into the hillside. "Now that we have the designs and the confession tape, we can reconstruct exactly how Joshua was kept, how they moved in and out, so we can share it with the FBI and help other families identify red flags." He guided Claire over to his laptop and opened a new document, its blank expanse waiting for their careful reconstruction of events. They began to outline the chronology, Harold's initial reconnaissance of the property, the construction crews he'd hired under false names, the mesh of audio equipment and air vents he'd installed, and Mira's lone visit, a crucial point that explained her knowledge of the tunnels. Each bullet point represented hours of detective work and the lives Isabel, Anna, and so many others that had been endangered. Outside, the first flurries of snow drifted past the window. A sudden knock on the door startled them both. Claire rose and opened it to find Detective Crystal Martinez, her coat dusted with snowflakes that glistened in the foyer light. "I've come to check on you both and to review the suitcase of evidence we collected from Harold's office," Martinez said, stepping inside with brisk efficiency. Ethan ushered her in. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing toward the desk. He handed her a USB drive. "This contains the digitized bunker plans and Mira's confession tape." Martinez plugged the drive into her tablet and began to scroll through the files. "Excellent work," she praised. "This level of detail will make the case airtight at trial." She paused at the schematic of the dog kennel where Harold's German Shepherd had first been brought to live. It also helps us understand exactly how and why Rodridge took those men to the clinic yesterday. He knew the bunker's layout and assumed he could retrieve the animals to finish Harold's legacy. She looked up sharply. "We've detained Michael and Carlos for questioning under RICO statutes. They've already begun to roll on Rodridge." Claire swallowed. "So the network collapses now?" Martinez nodded. "Yes. With Mira and Rodridge out of the picture, her by her own hand, him by virtue of your quick thinking, and these two men in custody, the ring Harold set in motion is effectively snuffed out." She met Ethan's eyes. "Joshua is safe." A tension that had sat heavy in Ethan's chest eased ever so slightly. "Thank you." Martinez packed away the tablet. "I'll leave you with these," she said, handing over several folders containing interview transcripts, lab results on the dog fur, and witness statements from the desert farmer who had distracted Michael and Carlos for long enough for your son to escape. She paused by the door. "I trust you'll keep this confidential until we're ready for the indictments." "Of course," Ethan assured her. As Martinez departed and the front door clicked shut behind her, Claire exhaled. "This feels final." Ethan crossed the room and held her. "The legal battle may still continue, but in our hearts, we have closure." He paused, reflecting on the months of therapy, the hospitalization, and now the forensic deconstruction of a nightmare. "Let's go upstairs and check on Joshua before his surgery," he suggested gently. Claire nodded, bracing herself. Hand in hand, they climbed the stairs to the children's wing, passing the nursery, where families still brought newborns home from the maternity ward. A poignant reminder of beginnings and families enduring hope. Outside Joshua's room, the hallway lights glowed softly. Through the open door, they saw him asleep, a silver bell on the bedside table within reach. As Ethan and Claire stepped inside, he stirred, opening his eyes and giving them both a lopsided smile despite the bandages. "Mom, Dad," he whispered. "Did you finish my story?" Ethan chuckled, lifting the bell. "We did. We even showed Detective Martinez your dream about Mira. She thinks it's a sign you're processing everything, and that you have the strength to move on." Joshua closed his eyes. "I want to keep it in my notebook," he said. "So I remember." Claire kissed his forehead. "Anything you want, sweetheart." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. "You're our hero, Joshua. You ran toward danger to save people, and then you survived the attack. That strength is what will guide you forward." Joshua nodded sleepily. "I want to go home soon," he said, voice soft. "And we'll bring you home tomorrow," Claire promised. "Fresh start, remember?" "Fresh start," Joshua repeated, a quiet determination in his voice. Ethan and Claire exchanged a hopeful glance, truly believing that the worst was behind them. Outside, the snow thickened, cloaking the world in pristine white, as if granting them permission to bury the ghosts of 1968, the cellar beneath Harold's kennel, and the tales that had spanned 3 decades of sorrow. Inside that small hospital room, the Coulter family closed a harrowing chapter, but with new pages ready to be written, born of survival love and the enduring promise that out of darkness, hope could always emerge. The dawn light filtered pale and gray across Lakeview's quiet residential street as Ethan and Claire drove their rental van up the long driveway of their new home. A gentle hush lay over the neighborhood, just a few well-tended houses spread along winding lanes that overlooked the sparkling lake beyond. For the Coulter family, every mile eastward had peeled away painful memories buried in Maple Hollow. Here the air felt different, crisp with possibility rather than dread. Inside the van, Joshua leaned against his car seat, eyes heavy but bright beneath the bandages. His arm was still in a sling, and the edges of his cheek wound itched where the sutures held it tenderly. He poked at the zippered pocket of the backpack on his lap. from which peaked the spiral-bound notebook he refused to let go of. He called it his treasure book, a chronicle of nightmares and miracles. "Almost there," Champ Ethan said, smiling in the rearview mirror. "Just a couple more feet, and we'll be home." Claire sat in the passenger seat, one arm resting protectively on the door console. She turned to meet Ethan's gaze, and they shared a moment of quiet triumph. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, its pale blue siding freshly painted, and its front lawn bare of the celebratory balloons and for sale signs that had marked it only days before. A small moving truck idled by the curb, men in work clothes carrying cardboard boxes inside with careful efficiency. "Look, Joshua," Claire said, pointing out the window. "Your room is that upstairs window, the one with the yellow star decal we put up last night." Joshua peered out and nodded, a shy but genuine smile curving his lips. "It's perfect," he whispered. "It's like a secret hiding place." Ethan killed the engine and turned in his seat to face his son. "Ready to get out and stretch your bones?" Joshua gave a thumbs up. "Can I ring the bell?" Ethan opened the side door and helped Joshua step down into the dewy grass. They approached the front porch together, and Joshua reached confidently for the brass doorbell button. Only it wasn't a button, but a little carved star that squeaked pleasantly when pressed. He squeezed it, and the star clicked as the chime rang inside. Ding, ding. From within the house there came a bustle of voices. Then the door swung open to reveal Mr. and Mrs. Latham, their new neighbors, wearing bright smiles and matching scarves of deep burgundy. Behind them, their twin boys, 8-year-old Ryan and Caleb, peered around the doorway, wide-eyed. "Welcome to Lakeview," Mr. Latham exclaimed, stepping forward. He was tall and lanky, with a warm face that seemed to greet every newcomer like old family. "We brought coffee, figured you could use it." He held out a thermos and 2 mugs. Ethan accepted them gratefully. "Thank you, that's very kind." He glanced at the twins. "Hey guys, I'm Ethan, and this is my wife Claire and our son Joshua." The boys stepped forward and offered hesitant fist bumps to Joshua. He grinned and returned them. Mrs. Latham moved to shake hands with Claire. "We're so glad you're here," she said. "We had kids your son's age too, and it's always nice to see new families on the block. We'll have to plan a play date once Joshua's feeling up to it." Claire thanked her, then turned to Ethan. "Coffee sounds wonderful," she said as she accepted a steaming mug. The warmth in her hands seared away the last threads of unease she'd carried since arriving. Just then the moving men appeared at the top of the porch steps, wheeling in the last of the big furniture. A heavy oak dining table slid through the doorway, and a pair of couches followed. The boys backed away respectfully as the movers maneuvered inside. "Sorry," one of them called. "We'll be in and out quickly." "We appreciate it," Ethan said. As the movers disappeared into the living room, the Lathams invited the Coulters inside for a quick break. The interior smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet, but also of home, waiting to be lived in. Claire set down her coffee and closed her eyes as its warmth spread through her chest. "Do you hear that?" she murmured to Ethan's surprise. In the background, over the hum of the movers, she could have sworn she heard the faint creak of a door, an echo of something she'd known all too well. Ethan followed her gaze to the hallway leading toward the back of the house. The breeze, maybe, he suggested, though he too felt the hairs on the back of his neck lift. The door to the mud room at the rear stood slightly ajar, even though the movers had passed through after setting down a stack of boxes. Mr. Latham noticed their hesitation. "New houses always settle, makes all kinds of squeaks," he said, stepping forward to close the door firmly. Inside, the hallway remained silent, save for the muffled voices and footsteps of the moving crew. The 3 neighbors exchanged glances, calm in the presence of new beginnings, before the Lathams guided the Coulters toward the kitchen, where a plate of homemade muffins and more coffee awaited. They seated themselves, and Claire concentrated on the warm sponge cake and the tang of blueberry jam. As she ate, she let gratitude fill her, pushing aside residual echoes of the cold cellars and deranged conspirators. Here in Lakeview she sensed safety, community, and the possibility of normal family life. Ethan looked around at the Lathams and their boys. "Thank you for welcoming us," he said. We've been through a lot. 8 years of searching, and then the courtroom, and even yesterday. It's a relief to be among friendly faces." Mrs. Latham's eyes were kind. "We know a bit about that case," she said. "We watched on the news." "What happened to you all was awful." Claire dropped her fork. "You watched the news. Have you heard about the attack yesterday?" Mrs. Latham glanced at Mr. Latham. "Just the children's report." We thought it was a dog bite, but when I saw you walking Joshua up to the hospital—" "Is he okay?" He's recovering," Claire replied. "The doctors say he'll be fine. Just some stitches and no permanent damage." The Lathams breathed relief. "That's wonderful," Mr. Latham said. "We'd love to help however we can. Groceries, errands, whatever." Ethan and Claire thanked them, sharing quiet smiles that contained a world of relief. After the Lathams left to return to their own breakfast, taken on the run, as suburban parents often did, the Coulters moved deeper into the house to inspect their belongings. Box by box, they unpacked the practical clothes for Joshua, his textbooks, family photos. With each picture they hung on the walls, snapshots of beach vacations and family barbecues. They rewrote the narrative of their lives away from the trauma that had been their past. By midday, the house began to feel lived in. The familiar hum of conversation drifted from room to room as the movers huffed and clattered. Ethan found himself in the study clearing away packing materials to make space for his work desk. He paused, pulling out a battered notebook from his briefcase, the bunker reconstruction log. For weeks, he and Claire had compiled every scrap of evidence into that book: maps, diagrams, confession, transcripts, analysis of security footage. He intended to donate it to the FBI archives once the trial concluded, so future investigators could learn from their case. He set the notebook gently on the new mahogany desk, then turned to look out the large window at the lake beyond. The glass reflected the moving truck and the bustle of the front yard, but also the calm stretch of fresh water that promised tranquility. He inhaled deeply, tasting the fresh pine-scented breeze that drifted inside. Upstairs, Claire and Joshua had reclaimed his bedroom. The walls, once blank, were now dotted with photos, the two of them at a Minnesota state fair, a small carved star from the doorbell painted on canvas, and the yellow police tape stretched in a neat line above his bed. Joshua, under his mother's guidance, had carefully arranged them in a patchwork display, his first project of reclaiming the narrative of his own life. Ethan climbed the stairs, pausing in the hallway. He felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness, of relief, that he could offer his son a safe room where the only sounds would be the creaking floorboards and the tumble of a loose window latch that he would soon fix himself. Inside, he found Joshua perched on the edge of the bed, hugging his notebook. "Look," Joshua said, holding it out. "I wrote my first chapter about us moving and how Mom and Dad never gave up." Claire hovered in the doorway watching. Ethan sat next to Joshua, brushing a lock of hair from his son's forehead. "That's amazing," he told him. "Your story is one of survival and hope." Joshua's eyes sparkled with a wisdom beyond his years. "I want to write the ending too," he said quietly. "A happy ending." Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance, rich with unspoken emotion. Hope, gratitude, the fierce parental love that had carried them through every nightmare. Here in this lakeside town, under a sky no longer haunted by shadows, they would write that ending together. As afternoon drifted into golden evening, the Coulter family gathered on the back deck, where a simple barbecue had been set up. Laughter light and genuine drifted out across the lawn. The scent of grilled vegetables and hamburgers mingled with the fresh scent of evergreens. The Latham twins raced through the yard, playfully chasing Joshua, who laughed without restraint or fear. Claire leaned into Ethan, resting her head on his shoulder. "We really are okay, aren't we?" she murmured. Ethan kissed her temple. "We're more than okay," he replied. "We're home." Beyond the lights of the deck, the lake shimmered like liquid silver beneath the early moon. And in that luminous glow, the Coulter family, scarred but unbroken, took their first unguarded breaths in the life they had fought so hard to claim. Their chapter of pain had closed, and before them lay the pages of a future bright with promise. Their story at last belonged not to the terrors of the past, but to the unwavering resilience of hope. Years later, they finally came home.